everybody, Panzer Penguin here, coming to you with another strategy guide of sorts to the Global War 1939 to 1945 board. It has been a long time since I've even loaded this up, um, let alone made a video of this, so I apologize for that delay, and hopefully you guys find this video useful like you have with the other ones. I am using my Panzer Penguin edit um, version of this. So if you take a look here, you go to the workshop, and you can see it's this one here, Global War 1939 PP's edits, just like my Global War 1936 PP edits for the other one. So let's go over Japanese strategy now. Japan tends to be one of the easier nations to play as, and a very aggressive Japanese player can essentially win the game pretty early on for the Axis by meaning the requirements of the cities controlled. It's very easy for the Japanese to basically control Australia and even parts of India before the United States is even in the war. So with that in mind, if we look at Japan, we see Japan controls the main island of Japan. Because of the start date, we're already a couple of years into the war against China, and that is reflected here by Manchuria, Manchukuo, and the pretty good portion of the coast of China being already under Japanese possession, even Korea. So if we take a little zoom in here, I apologize for that twitchy mouse today. We can see there's a good amount of troops here in China. Most importantly, though, they're the veteran infantry for Japan. And if all this is all still here, which it is, we can look here and see that the veteran infantry have a bonus. They attack on a 3, while if we look at regular infantry, they attack on a 2. Um, the only problem, though, for Japan is that these veteran infantry, these sort of yellowish troops and aircraft, if you lose them, you cannot purchase any more. Uh, and there's a good amount, I guess it technically reflects the veterans from fighting the Chinese for what would it be, 2 or 3 years now historically. Um, on the other hand, we have a lot of regular infantry still in Japan, along with our factory and our ships with our also specialized naval bombers and fighters, uh, which you can also look on that card down there in the bottom left corner to see what all that does. And we also have the Japanese naval infantry, which get a bonus on naval invasions. So Japan has quite a lot of effective tools at its hand, even right from the start, that kind of give it an advantage over everybody around it. I'll go into the Chinese strategies when I do their respective countries, of course. Very common strategy for Japan is right off the bat, because these are home controlled territories as opposed to captured territories. You can actually build a minor industry here in Shanghai, which kind of skips one turn of movement in regards to getting troops down here on the front line. When you also liberate Siam, you can also build a factory in Siam, which puts you right on the front line with India, who obviously have a pretty restricted build ability. Of course, the big goal for Japan is to take the Money Islands, which are basically all these Dutch islands down here, New Guinea and all that. Because if you look at the values, these are some pretty high value territories to take. 4, 4, 3, 2, 2, 1, and 1. So 4, 8, 10, 13, 14, 15. I mean, that's almost, 16, 17, 18 points income, whatever you want to call it. IC is what I call it, for Japan, and it's pretty lightly defended, and there really isn't much the British can do to reinforce these without leaving Calcutta completely exposed, and that would be a pretty crushing blow to lose Calcutta. Um, so as Japan and there's a few different ways to play Japan, really. But generally, you always do want to go for those money islands, and you've got a pretty big navy. Uh, so to start off, you need to kind of decide what you're going to do with China. China can be a thorn in your side. Um, it just kind of drains manpower for territories that really aren't worth a whole lot unless you go hard and fast at them and take them all. You really want to break the Burmese road as fast as you can. And if you're not at war with the British, then you really want to take Szechuan as fast as you can. And typically, the way you kind of do that is you, on your first turn, you do a whole bunch of attacks into China. You do a whole bunch of naval attacks. You got a lot of transport ships, so you're able to do that, and you're able to support them with a lot of your big ships as well. Plus, you have a ton of aircraft. I think pretty much every aircraft that Japan owns can get in on the action on the first turn. I believe so. So you can be pretty devastating on your first turn, and you really don't want these combats to last more than one round if you can help it. Um, Especially with your veteran fighters, so you want to punch hard and punch fast. Um, Pretty simple. Uh, Usually, on by your turn as Japan, since Paris has fallen, you'll know whether French Indochina is yours or if you need to invade it. Obviously, there's no defenders in it, so it can really sort of be taken at any time. Obviously, Saigon is the big one due to the value there. Um, so yeah, you want to break the Burmese road as fast as you can because as you'll learn in future videos, the Chinese can produce artillery as long as the road is open, which gives them a threat of attack against you. As soon as this line is broken, though, they only have infantry. Infantry is not very good at attacking, so you don't really have to worry about it. Um, Now, depending on your strategy, if you do go for China, it does, if you look here, bring you close to the one of the places the Russians can retreat to um, if Moscow falls. So if your German ally is doing really well, and in the game I was playing, I was playing as Germany. The turn I took Moscow was also followed up then by the Japanese launching an attack against Novosibirsk, however you want to pronounce it, which effectively ended the Russians' ability to wage war, and the map resulted in a Axis victory by I think turn 10 or 11. I think it became mathematically impossible for the Allies to break the hold of the required amount of capital cities controlled by the Axis powers uh, for the conditions to win the game. Um, so your transports are a great way, and also a great way for a first term purchase is the minor factory and some transport ships because you will be producing units here and you have a lot of units you want to get off your mainland and into the fight. I like burning a lot of these regular infantry and units over to China so that they can absorb the hits that the instead of the veteran irreplaceable uh, units can. Obviously, you will probably eventually be going to war against the United States. They have a small navy, especially compared to yours, especially early on. But you do want to keep in mind the rule for your sneak attack against the United States, which is here before the start of turn 7, so turn 1 through 6. And I really recommend using against the United States. You get a whole bunch of extra production for the turn, and you get some pretty good stats for attacking the American fleet. So if you're lucky and you position yourself well, and the Americans slip up, um, you could really damage their fleets. I've even seen the west coast of the United States being invaded on the same turn as the Japanese sneak attack. That was a pretty crazy game, obviously, but that is something to be aware. I believe Anzac has a thing here. Do we not have it? Maybe I'm confusing it. Let's see. Oh yeah, so here it is. The +5 production if Dutch New Guinea, Rabaul, and the Solomon Islands are controlled. So this is where it's good to know. So here's Dutch New Guinea, Rabaul, and the Solomon Islands. So to prevent Anzac from getting that bonus 5, which may seem pretty small, but for a country like Anzac that only makes 10, that's a 50% increase. You will want to take one of these. Obviously, some of them are undefended, um, but again, this port town here could be quite useful, or this port and airfield that you sort of start off, launch an attack onto New Zealand. Um, that's why it's good to be familiar with some of the goals of these other countries so that you can sort of disrupt them. Um, research wise, if we go down to our research table, one of the one of the best things for the Japanese is the jet fighter and long range aircraft. Yeah, they're pretty expensive, but given the veteran status of some of the uh, Japanese units for their aircraft, this just turns them into monster aircraft. Shipyards could be useful if you really want to go that way to have slightly cheaper uh, ships being built. And of course, infantry tactics I think is pretty much a must just for that little bonus to everything. You probably aren't going to want to worry about heavy tank guns. And you could, as Japan, go for the artillery as well, but you have very few pieces of artillery to start off with, so you'll have to kind of make a decision on that pretty quickly. And if I haven't said it already in one of my videos, I personally think war bands, war bonds is the pretty useless uh, technology to go for. Um, I mean, you could gain a few little bonus income from it, but I don't think there's really enough time to pay it off. Spending however many dice you would need to spend. You're going to spend at least 4, if not 6 die to get up to war bonds. That's going to take quite a while to pay for itself, essentially. Um, yeah. Uh, the important thing to keep in mind as the Japanese is your sort of your big ports, because you're going to sort of be mirroring the movements of the United States once you're at war with them, and obviously uh, the Caroline Islands with their naval port is going to be quite useful. You're going to kind of want to be centralized around there, and let's see, 1, 3, so you don't quite get back to Japan. Um, Maybe I'm getting this confused with the other map. I mean, it puts you within range of the Hawaiian Islands, and that's going to be where the Americans launch their attacks. A very common tactic for the Japanese, and even the American will mirror it, is to use a destroyer screen where uh, you have your destroyers sort of out here like this. I'll just duplicate some here. You do something like that, or even like that when you're at war with them, which prevents them from being able to hit you in one turn anywhere. It's going to take them 2 turns because they're encountering the destroyer. So we call that a destroyer screen, and it prevents them from doing the same to you, at least in closer to your waters. Um, so keep that in mind as a tactic to use. Um, can be very annoying and very frustrating for a player when you have your whole fleet and you get hung up on a single destroyer. So that's a pretty common strategy you'll see by the Japanese player. And the other thing to look at when you're fighting the United States is obviously you want to break their bonus money. Um, where is? Do I not have it on here? Oh yeah, yeah. You really want to take San Francisco, but to also really hamper the American effort, you're gonna want to try and raid their convoy. So that's 5 income there. That's another 5 there. Another 5 there. So you can really hurt the United States by hitting 15 off their income each turn, which is a pretty big number. If you can, you want to get submarine or destroy into each one of those convoys and sort of start trying to bleed the Americans. You can also do the same to the British. They're not worth quite as much, but it's also a good thing to do against the Far East, uh, what FEC Far East Command. Um, so yeah, um, I don't think I'm really missing anything important. If I am, or if you have questions about what you can do with the Japanese, please leave questions, etc., in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to answer them to the best of my knowledge. And like I said, I am by no means an expert on this game. I just happen to be the only person producing videos on it at this time. Um, that wraps up the Japanese. Oh, I guess I should probably go over some of their special abilities. So we look here. I'm guessing you should be able to read this all pretty good. Try that. So the Banzai, regular infantry can make 3 Banzai attacks per turn, up to 2 per infantry per battle. They get a +1 attack for the first round, but they cannot retreat. So you're going to want to make note if you do use a Banzai attack, which units those are. You know, get the stack for being paired with artillery, so it's kind of in place of artillery because as Japan, you have very few pieces of artillery, and your veteran and naval infantry cannot be used. Um, you do get a bonus to defense in all your home territory, so all those yellowish colors, you get a +1 defense, and that does apply to naval and veterans. And then here's that sneak attack I was talking about. You get 3 battles in which the defender, if not already at war with Japan, may not return fire in the first round of combat. So that is huge. You can do some serious damage and kill a whole bunch of defenders without them even being able to fire back. It's kind of like a sneak attack, like the submarine sneak attack. That goes into some more details. And if you, this red line is the important one. Japan attacks the U.S. using a sneak attack. The U.S. may not defend in the first round of combat, and all ships suffer a -2 to defense for the rest of the battle. So that's why you really want to use your sneak attack if you can on the American Navy or navies if they're split in half, because not only do they not get to fire back on their first round, but all their defense values suffer a -2 penalty to them. So that's why that's huge. Um, you also, as Japan, get money for Singapore, Calcutta, and or Sydney. So every time you or each turn you control one of those, you get a +5. And if you control the Dutch East Indies and all of your original territories, so you need to control all the yellow, including all the islands, and all the orange, and you get a bonus as well. So that's a little harder to do, but it does give you a little bit more money if you do. And if you're controlling the Dutch East Indies, which you should really be doing, I mean that's going to be huge for your efforts because you've got the United States juggernaut who's going to be focused on you at some point. Uh, I think that about covers it. So hopefully this video wasn't too long. I wasn't timing it. So again, comments, suggestions, questions, leave them down below, and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. And next up will be, as we look at our list here on the right, you haven't figured it out, I'm going in turn order. So next up will be Russia and Communist China. And then we'll probably have a bit of a longer one on the United Kingdom and Anzac, and then we'll do the U.S. and nationalist China. We've already gone over Italy, and well, there's no point going over France since they ceased to exist on the first turn. But if you need me to, I can make a little video on them and how the Foreign Legion works. Panzer Penguins signing out.